Mindful Money Planners and Happiness Seekers. I'm sitting here with Jonathan DeYoe, who's President and CEO at Mindful Money. Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, Adrena, how are you?
Good, and you?
I'm
So
doing
glad
well.
to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. So Jonathan founded Mindful Money in 2001 with the intent of offering really exceptional customer service and then also giving independent financial advice. So we're here to get to know you better, Jonathan, learn a little bit more about Mindful Money and your personal expertise. But before we do that, we want to go into some icebreaker questions to get to know you.
Sounds good.
Okay, are you ready?
All righty.
Great. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So most of the people we work with know that I grew up in Rapid City, South Dakota. My childhood is kind of marked with some financial insecurity. I studied, so this made me want to study business and money and investing starting in like middle school. And I started trading stocks when I was about 9 years old. With my, money I made from mowing lawns and from birthday money, those kinds of things. So this was kind of a way for me to escape the feeling as I grew older that I didn't have enough or I wouldn't have enough. But then I went to college and I got really bored with finance, switched to studying philosophy and comparative religion. And I moved actually to California to study in a Lutheran seminary. So I became a seminarian. I switched to become an academic student of Buddhism. I dropped out of that academic program and with $45,000 of student loan debt, which was probably not the best decision, but I started working at Dean Witter. And at Dean Witter in San Francisco, I was there for about 2 years before I hopped to a different firm. I was there for about a year before I went to a different firm. And then that firm merged and I ended up working at 7 different Wall Street firms in about 6 years. Universally a bad experience. I almost quit 3-4 times. And ultimately I left. I had a guy named Ernie Guzman, who was a great mentor, who said, you know what, you can do it your way. Recommended I start my own thing. I started my own thing in 2002 out of my basement with like 6 clients. Today we serve like 300 clients, 300 families, and we've created some educational courses, that have been taken by hundreds of people. Now I met my wife in the late 90s. We were married in 03. I hope I have that right. She'll let me know if I don't. My son was born in 04. My daughter was born in 07. That's kind of the thumbnail sketch of my history.
Wow, that's quite a road. So if you could pick one animal as your spirit animal, which one would it be and why?
We talked about this a little briefly before we started the interview and try to hone in on, is this the animal you'd like to be, or is this the animal that would be like the most best represents you? And I think if it was the animal that I like to be, it'd be like a jaguar or a cat of some kind, something powerful and strong and sleek and beautiful. But I think the reality is it's an elephant. I think that they're calm, they're wise but playful, they're strong but gentle. I think that probably the elephant is the spirit animal.
I love that. It's a really interesting choice. And they also have a great memory. So they remember everything. So that's really interesting.
My team would tell you my memory is not as good, but the other stuff's true, but the memory not so much.
Oh, you have a good team that can help you with the memory then.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
That's great. If you had a theme song for your life, which one would you choose and why?
One? Wow.
You can pick more if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I love music, so and I sort of partake in many different genres. So it could be, I'm thinking about songs that have been on repeat in my life over different periods of time. So Lennon's Imagine, Indigo Girls, Galileo. I used to listen to that one just constantly all the time. Eminem's Not Afraid. Oh, you know what? Actually, this is it. It's Bobby McFerrin's Don't Worry, Be Happy. It's a very Buddhist message. What is it? It's in every life we have some trouble, but when you worry, you make it double. Don't worry.
Don't worry.
That's it. Yeah, I love that. I think that's it. That's my theme song.
Yeah, it's amazing. And he does like so many vocals in the background that are so good. I love
He's
it.
incredible.
And you have a nice mix of genres,
Yeah.
so that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So if you could describe yourself in 3 words, which would you use?
I think I would say the first one is probably optimistic. The second one is focused. and I'd like the third one. It gets a little bit more vague, but I'd say it's compassionate. I could probably go one or two different ways, but it's probably optimistic, focused, and compassionate.
Awesome. What's one thing your coworkers don't know about you?
Yeah, it's kind of a tough question. I'm a very anxious person. I'm always unintentionally envisioning bad things happening. You know, my kids getting injured, people leaving me, scary noises in the dark. You know, the keeping the anxiety at bay is a pretty near constant battle for me. And my mom has suggested she suffers from anxiety as well. She suggested that it's genetic and maybe, you know, it's something that we can medicate. And I don't want to do that. So I've just been, for me, meditation is the anxiety prevention or anxiety treatment. But I keep, you know, it's something I always have to deal with.
Yeah, I think meditation is an excellent medicine for anxiety or stress or anything like that. So it's
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what's one thing that everybody seems to love that you don't understand why?
Hot new investment ideas, all of them. Like investing in my mind, investing is a simple process that it has to do with probabilities, it has to do with value, it has to do with earnings. And these things come out of nowhere that are like, they become like headlines and media loves them and chase them. And I just wish it would not happen because it ends up hurting everybody. And I just don't get it. I just don't get how we get sucked into these things on a, you know, everyone that comes around, we get sucked into it culturally. And it just doesn't make sense that we keep doing it. But yeah, that's it. I don't get any of them.
Yeah, there's so much misinformation that it can be like really daunting to know what's actually true, what's not, what's effective, what's not.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't think the information is out there to tell you what is smart, but then there's this overwhelming emotion that comes with, you know, many headlines and lots of people that you trust talking about it. And then suddenly it's a thing that's front and center and you have to actually address it unless you have a rule that says all this stupid and you just ignore it.
That happens as well.
Yeah.
So, well, now we're just going to move into the area of getting to know more about your wisdom and your experience. So, my first question is, what's one thing you wish you would have known when you began your career?
Oh God, this is easy. So I joined Dean Witter and I went to Morgan Stanley and then I went to Payne Weber. So I spent the first many years of my career at big Wall Street firms. Now, what I didn't know, I mean, I came out of, you know, a graduate program in religious studies. So I didn't really understand the business side of the financial services world. I really wish I would have known about RIAs and small planning firms and would have skipped the whole, you know, brokerage selling environment. I think that I'd be so much further ahead and be helping a lot more people today had I not spent the first 6 years, you know, shilling stock and selling, you know, stuff that didn't have value to it. It was just not good for anybody, not good for the clients, great for the firms, not good for the clients, not good for me. So yeah, I wish I would have understood the differences in the different roles that advisors could play versus brokers.
Great. And what advice would you give to someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours?
I guess kind of in the same vein, realizing as soon as possible that the work isn't, you have a choice. There's people that focus on managing investments and there's people that focus on managing investors or supporting investors and good investor behavior. And so what we do is we focus on managing investor behavior. So if you want to do what we do, if that's kind of the goal, then before college, pre-college, if you're thinking about this pre-college, then you want to study things like humanities, like financial history, philosophy, psychology. These are the things, history in general. You want to study these things. And if you are just, whether you're pre or post college, and if you're interested in this industry, I would say read everything Nick Murray has ever written and just start reading everything you can about behavioral finance and behavioral economics. I think that is our role, is to apply the lessons of behavioral finance and behavioral economics with our clients. And so that's probably the best thing you can start with.
And what's a common myth about your profession that you would want to debunk?
Common myth. It's not just our profession, but it's pervasive across all finance. It's this, it's that advisors or anyone can pick winning investments in advance. It can't be done. It's something that clients come and that's what they want. It's something that media talks about all the time, but media is always talking about what happened. Hey, look at this great investment that already happened. It's been a great investment. It doesn't say, hey, it will be a great investment. And that sort of makes people think, well, we can predict, and we can't predict. And we need to debunk the myth that we can predict.
Excellent. And what's the thing you like the most about your work?
I like that we can help people put money in context in their lives. In our culture, the definition of success can get pretty twisted. The tendrils of money reach into all areas of life, but that doesn't mean money has to be the focus or even should be the focus. So when we do this, we put money at the center, and that causes just enormous amounts of stress, and it hurts health, it hurts relationships. It doesn't bring better outcomes either. So we have this process called our mindful wealth mapping process. And that helps people put their financial lives together kind of like a puzzle. And so the thing I think I like the most is watching a client's face when that final piece of the puzzle fits and they see, oh, it works. I can have this retirement income for the rest of my life. I can leave this legacy for my kids. I can support my kids in college. That when that last piece fits, I think that's a really kind of a special moment when they see the plan and they see that they can make it happen.
Wow, that sounds super powerful. That's great. And if you could tell me a story that touched your heart related to your profession and how that changed your career, which one would it be?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are many, 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 many client stories that I could share. I think the most interesting thing that actually changed my work was about 10 years ago. I was at a conference and I saw Mark Tibergien, he's the former CEO of one of our, not our custodian, but one of the biggest custodians, Pershing. It's owned a bank in New York. But he told a story about an advisor who died without a succession plan in place. Now, Mark was talking to an audience of advisors, and he made sort of the obligatory comments about how this left that advisor's family in the lurch. But the more important message, I think, Mark was suggesting was that by not having a succession plan in place, that advisor really hurt his clients. Because, I mean, it's basically tantamount to failing as an advisor. Because you think about this, advisor dies, clients, some of which are in their 80s, suddenly find themselves in a position of uncertainty and fear. They don't have the advice they've always had. They don't have the guide that they've always had. They don't have the behavioral advice they've always had. And just some simple planning would have made that better. So that's kind of the story. True client care requires a sustainable enterprise. And so in our business, the way that comes through into the way that changed things for my work is, I started looking for a couple of years. I looked at partnering with a larger organization, so something that would make us sustainable. But ultimately, we decided kind of with the team on this that how about we just build something that's internally sustainable rather than seek a big partner. Let's build something that's internally sustainable. And that's why there's been, in the last 2, 3, 4 years, there's been a big resurgence of, we've hired a bunch of people, we have grown more, we've added new clients. And I don't want to grow for growth's sake. So we're still very selective of the people we're bringing on as clients and the people we're bringing on to work with us. But I do want to see Mindful Money continue after me. And so for that to happen, we have to have enough people, maybe it's 15, maybe it's 20 people. We have to have enough of a consistent revenue stream. We have to have something that lasts. And so to create that, I'm imagining myself someday as just a client of the firm Mindful Money, not the CEO, not the president, not the founder, just a guy who works with other advisors, has an advisor at Mindful Money. And I think I think we can get there. Just a matter of time and sort of concerted effort.
Wow. Yeah, I think you can definitely get there. And if you could give a piece of advice to someone who's starting to plan their finances, what advice would you give them?
We have a phrase that's somewhere on our website that says, stop predicting, start planning, stay mindful. This really isn't rocket science. There's very little in the way of specialized knowledge in the industry, but the world focuses so heavily on markets and performance. If you just turn on a news channel or read a newspaper or check your news feeds or whatever, there's people that are constantly pushing us with fear and greed to make financial choices, and we end up responding by making those financial choices, some of them not so good. So this is the culture of prediction, but there's tons and tons and tons of studies that look at the quality of our predictions. Turns out we suck at it. We are not good at making predictions. So really, you got to stop predicting, and then you have to. So you're not predicting. What do? Well, let's use probability and models and plan. And then once you have the plan, you have to stay forever mindful of the difference between, okay, there's this news story, I'm getting pulled into the mode of prediction, versus there's this news story, there's a thing out there that makes me feel afraid or excited. How does that affect my plan? So it's going back to the plan. So stop predicting, start planning, and then stay mindful of that difference.
Amazing. No crazy reactions, just step by step.
Steady as she goes.
Yeah.
Steady as she goes.
Excellent. Okay. So as you know, this has been a bit of a complicated year, and I'm guessing there's more to come. What roadblock do you see coming during 2021?
So we always, humans tend to always say that the thing that we've just recently gone through is the most complicated or the worst or the, and we just, there's the US election cycle. It was definitely crazy. But if we think back to Vietnam and we think back to some other times, there's some equally crazy election cycles. So, but there are some things, and the point of that is it is crazy, but it's always crazy. The illusion that it's, someday not going to be crazy, that's kind of silly. But there are some distinct areas of frothiness in terms of like roadblocks. There's some frothiness things that are forming in the markets. You can think of GameStop, Bitcoin, IPOs, this not new, but newly public knowledge thing called SPAC investing. More importantly, there are people behind those things that are pulling levers that are making enormous amounts of money. And they may not be technically manipulating markets, but they are certainly playing on people's fear and greed impulse. So just being aware of that's a roadblock in itself. And finally, I think the biggest issue that we're facing isn't the election cycle, isn't COVID. There is a huge secular change afoot. Rates, I think, hit rock bottom in November, December, and we're getting a little technical here, but and since then they've snapped back impressively. And this is, or could potentially be, the beginning of a long uptrend in rates. If it is, which we won't know until hindsight, then the investment universe is about to change drastically. All those things that are like growth oriented, those things that used to work, they will not work as well in the future if we see those rates going up that way. And it's really interesting, something to be aware of. Again, we're not going to know for a number of years looking back if that's the case, but there's going to be some surprises.
Definitely. So how do you think disciplined behaviors can have a long-term effect on a person's life?
So most of our behavior, most of our reactions are habitual. Our amygdala pretty much determines our lives. It tells us, our amygdala makes us move, makes us act in every way: relationships, work, money, recreation. Our response to every stimulus is pretty much driven by our amygdala. And these cognitive processes and these habits, we don't really understand them. So the discipline that we can apply can actually be helpful in changing some of those habits. So practicing disciplined behaviors can affect the habits. And if we have better habits, we get better outcomes. Make sense?
Yeah, totally. I think like having habits and a routine is definitely a way to kind of improve your life and make things work better for you and for those
Yep.
around you.
Yep.
Perfect. And what should I ask that I didn't know enough to ask?
I think that I think we're going to talk about mindful money in the next sort of segment. So I think you covered it, some background and some history and me. That's great.
Perfect. Okay, so now we're going to move into the mindful money segment. How did you make the decision to found mindful money and why?
Yeah. It wasn't founded as mindful money. So 20 years ago, when I started the firm, it was founded originally as DeYoe Wealth Strategies. Because at that time, I was coming out of Wall Street. I still thought that I could predict, right? I still thought I could have a strategy that would work. And then that name shifted to DeYoe Wealth Management. But I made the original decision to start DeYoe Wealth Strategies because I couldn't align the demands of my employer with the needs of my client. And I tried at 6 or 7 different firms. I couldn't make it work. So I left because I knew that the thing that was most important wasn't the latest hot product. It wasn't this stock or that stock that the company was selling or wanting me to sell. It was education and planning. So the original impetus was, how do I create a client-focused firm that actually works with the levers that we know work for long-term better client outcomes. That was the reason to do it. And then the name Mindful Money doesn't come around until after 2000. Well, it's very recent, like a couple of years ago, right? 2017, when I published my book, and that kind of brought together this idea of, well, the two streams of my life came together: the financial services stream and the money and mindfulness stream came together in the book. And then a couple of years after that, I said, you know what? This is the vision. This is what we are. Let's just rename the firm to this. And so, everyone that works with us now was, worked through that name change, which is fantastic. Everyone was supportive. I was always worried about it. People are going to think I'm soft and think I'm silly to name it Mindful Money. But so far, everyone has responded great. And I feel great about it now.
Yeah, excuse me, I love the name. And
Thank
the
you.
whole rebrand, I think it was amazing.
Thank you.
So could you tell us a little bit more about your role at Mindful Money, what you do and everything?
Yeah. I think John would tell you that I'm the guy with the vision, how all the different parts and how the messaging all fits together. John and Gail take care of almost all the operational aspects of the firm. Advisors and planners work with most of the clients. I kind of set a tone. I build portfolios. I work with more complex financial situations, and I basically create the messaging. And then, I'm where the buck stops. If there's an issue or a problem or, a big decision or something that has to be made and no one else wants to make it, I get to make it. But most of the team does most of the work. And I love writing, I love speaking, and I love doing this kind of thing. And so that's where I spend most of my time.
Excellent. What does being mindful of your money and finance mean to you?
So mindful money starts with this admission that we're not as rational as we think, right? Mindfulness is a way to see the world how it is and then note our reactions to it. I think most of our financial problems stem from a lack of understanding about how markets work, and therefore a belief that they can be predicted or controlled, or they come from not knowing what we really want to accomplish in life. So being mindful with your money is just noting those two things.
Great. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to be more mindful with their finances?
This could be probably an hour conversation in and of itself. But just keeping it simple, you start with a plan, get an honest understanding of where you are financially and where you want to go. What are all those milestones along the path? Write it down, map it out. Then ask yourself what levers you can actually pull to make it all happen. So I'm a meditator. I've been a daily meditator for a couple decades. And I believe that our plan is to our financial lives exactly what our breath is to our meditation. It's the thing we turn to, our focal point, when we're distracted by other things. When I'm sitting and my knee hurts, I go, oh, my knee hurts. And is that pain going to be bad? And it distracts me from my breath. When I'm just going about my life and I see a shiny new object that I'd like to buy, but it's not something that's really going to add value long-term to my life, the tendency is to just buy it. But then it has a long-term repercussions because that money is no longer in my pocket. It's no longer invested. It can't be used to pay for my kids' college education, can't be used for my retirement. So it's by returning to my plan as my focal point, I can make better decisions. And that, I think that's really what it means to be more mindful about your finances is, what do I want? Map it out. What do I want for my life? What decisions can I make with the dollars that I have to help me get those things that I really want, and lining it up.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Thank you for sharing.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope it's powerful.
Yeah. And what's the biggest challenge you have to deal with in your current role, and what are you doing to overcome it?
Yeah, so I think right now, we just talked about what the role kind of is. I think the challenge is finding the right people from diverse backgrounds to join the team. I think I have to admit that our team right now doesn't fully reflect the diversity of our community. And so my hope is that as we add people to the team, we come to reflect the diversity of our community more. We've been reaching out through, how are we going to solve it? We've been reaching out through networks. We have, job postings and those kind of things out there. And we're starting to see some things come in that are interesting. Some people reach out to us. And I think if you stay tuned on this one, I think in a 6 months, 12 months, you'll see a couple new people. And I'm hoping that's the case, but I think that's the biggest challenge, is finding people that really fit, that also add to the diversity of our team.
Excellent. And how do you continue to learn in order to stay on top of things within your job?
Oh God, this is easy. I read every single day. I read for at least an hour every single day. And I have two different news feeds that come in, news readers, and they populate with, one of them populates with, how to have a better life, managing your own habits, mindfulness, relationships, meaningful work, those kind of messaging. The other one populates itself with, markets, economics, what's the Fed saying? What are all the different pundits talking about, and all that market data that comes in. So I have these two feeds. I read thoroughly in both feeds every single day. And I do that because I love it. And I happen to have a job that actually those two things actually support and become meaningful and important for it. And it's just, I would do that anyways. I think it's fun stuff.
Great. And what are you curious about now, and why?
Yeah, this one hurts a little bit, actually, because I'm actually most curious about how we're going to come together. It all feels pretty fractured right now. There's right versus left, haves versus not, men versus women, black versus white. I'm mostly curious about the path to reconciliation and getting to a place where, when I grew up in a Lutheran church, and this concept of being our brother's keeper or sister's keeper was important in my family. And my dad lived this. My mom and dad were very supportive of anyone and everyone that needed it, even though we didn't have enough ourselves. And I think that we need to get there regardless of our differences. I think we need to tolerate and love each other regardless of how we're different. And I'm curious about how we get there. I don't see a distinct path, and that's painful to watch, actually.
Yeah, I can't wait until we get to that point. It's going to be really exciting.
Imagine.
Yeah, definitely. And in your own words, what does this phrase mean? Mindfulness is a doorway to more rational choices.
So this is you got this right off the website, I think. So yeah, it's funny. We wrote this down. We had this big conversation, David Glotzer and I, And actually the whole team was there, but David Glotzer was asking, Jonathan, I don't get it. What does mindfulness have to do with finance? What does mindfulness have to do with finance? And I kept coming back to, mindfulness is a non-judgmental acceptance of the world the way it is. And so what that means is it's seeing the world, seeing the markets, seeing the economy, seeing my decision process for what it is before I overlay a whole bunch of narrative, before my amygdala reaches into all of my cognitive and emotional biases to make me make a decision. So what is really going on? Mindfulness lets me see what is really going on, and it lets me make more rational choices, right? So that's the concept of mindfulness, is one where you get to see both the world and your decisions about the world in a way that frames the decision in a way where you can actually see better choices. And you can actually decide not based on emotion, but based on what do I really want? How does it really work? Let's make the decisions to get there. So in that way, mindfulness is a doorway to making rational choices.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And with that, we finish our round of questions. Thank you, Jonathan, so much for taking your time to join us and sharing your expertise.
Thanks, Andrina, for having me.
Happy to. So we hope you enjoyed this Mindful Money Talks series. And remember to stop predicting, start planning, and stay mindful. Goodbye.